is probably early on. I was really excited by like Vermeer and Rembrandt. I took this interest in. I was kind of fascinated with light, drawing and painting light in interiors and spaces and sunbeams and things like that. So I was really kind of affected by those guys. In addition to Hopper, who was also famously a painter of light and so forth. So I kind of resonate with that. Early on in high school, one of my painters I was most excited about was Frank Frazetta, who used to do Conan the Barbarian kind of covers for books and things like that. Just this New York guy that just did these crazy paintings of warriors fighting and everything. I just love that. So he kind of strangely gave me this first appreciation for paint. Just like this kind of, he made these kind of really nice paintings that had these kind of juicy notes of color and marks, and he knew how to draw the human figure and everything. So back when I was a kid, I loved that. But then of course that grew into kind of falling in love with Vermeer, Rembrandt, and Hopper, and then eventually Velasquez. Huge influence on me, and particularly his painting Las Meninas, and then probably Cezanne. Yeah. I think he's always, what he did was always so exciting to me, like how he kind of reinvented what painting could be and how he affected all the painters in the 20th century from then on. I just thought it was amazing, so I always come back to him, and I think probably a little bit of Diebenkorn too affected me. He was kind of my bridge into abstraction. Like he's one of the guys that made me kind of comfortable with what abstraction is and what it could be. So he's always been, and all those Berkeley guys, that group that they had in California, all those guys were kind of an influence on me too, I think. Especially when you do a painting a day and all that kind of thing. You kind of, you try to open yourself up to anything, right? You try not to narrow yourself down. You have to kind of develop this kind of painterly hair trigger where you don't think about it too much. You just see something and you just start painting, see what happens. Rather than like, is this worthy? How long is this gonna take? Should I do this? Is this arty enough? You just see something, you go, okay. And if you think about it, you go throughout your day, you see these little passages, these little poetic passages that you don't know what to really think about them, but somehow they grab you. They're just kind of beautiful or interesting, and you're not really sure why. So part of a painting a day was just like opening myself up to those moments and just painting. And sometimes they work out, and sometimes they don't. And over time, the internet came along and video became fairly inexpensive and everything. So I bought a camera, and I thought, what do I look like when I paint? Like, what is a painting? I'd like to see myself paint. So it was just really just for me for a while, where I just kind of video myself making a painting. And then I started posting it online and all that, and it got this kind of neat response. It was just kind of fun. And strangely, by the way, when you watch yourself painting, you find yourself rooting for yourself, where you're like, oh yeah, this is looking good. No, why did you do that? It's really weird, and you kind of get outside yourself, which is kind of instructive. But over time, I started to think, well, what if I made a kind of animation, which is really kind of just one step beyond. Like, what if I did something like a melting ice cream cone, and I just painted it as it melted? And at that time, I was getting kind of good enough that I could kind of really maneuver the paint a lot and manipulate it and change it. And so I was interested in these kind of states of change, of how something changes and how we view it and how our view of something changes over time. And if you're a painter who paints things over time, you have to think about time, right? So this was another way to kind of think about time and so forth. So I'd started painting it, and ice cream would melt, and I'd take a bite out of it and another bite. And so you'd see this kind of weird, not quite stop motion, not quite animation, somewhere in between there. And so and people loved it. Like, they were just so excited about it. And so I just kept upping the ante a little bit. So I'd have an egg that I would
Yeah.
crack, and then crack a little more, crack a little more. And then it got more and more involved until I did the white phase. That, you know, that took like a month to do, very involved and everything. So it was like this more traditional kind of still life that was animated in surprising ways.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of like testing things. Now I start getting into audio a little bit more and doing these little quirky things. But so that's how I got into that. It's just kind of experimentation. It's definitely something you have to be. Like I got on board with the internet before a lot of other painters did. So I've been familiar with this kind of thing, not quite social media at that point, but I was familiar with the internet and kind of how people respond to it, and you know, the attention that you can get, and what happens when you go viral and things like that. So I was familiar with all that before social media started coming along. So I was aware of the dangers of constant feedback. When I was in the 90s and I was showing in galleries in New York and so forth, maybe after doing a whole body of work, maybe you talk to 5 or 10 people about your work, right? After having a show up for a month and you'd maybe talk to 5 or 10 people, and maybe 2 of those people would be like your teachers or something, like fellow painters that you connect with or something. You just have these conversations about your work. That was your feedback. You go from that to, you know, one of my animations getting 50 million, 100 million views or something like that, or you get, you know, 4,000 people making comments about your work, and especially the nature of painting today, you're throwing it up all the time for people to see. And you get the likes, and you get the nice comments and everything like that. It's very easy to fall into the trap of allowing that feedback to dictate what it is you do in your studio. It's like, oh, these kinds of paintings get lots of attention. These paintings don't get any attention. Not a lot of likes on this one. And then you're battling the algorithms. You don't know who's seeing what when. You don't know if Facebook or Instagram is manipulating the algorithms to make you want more. There's this attempt to addict you to the feedback, to the dopamine hits. And you have to really build a wall around you and your easel and your subject, and try not to allow that to affect it, because then that kind of personal connection that you have to your subject, and kind of poetic moments that you have that are very quiet, very delicate, that you have to, those can dissolve and just disappear, just like a puff of smoke. And so you have to be protective of that, and you have to realize that the online world is one thing. There's kind of, you're in a marketing gear over here where you're putting your work out, but this other mode has to be protected, because that's you. That's what makes you you as a painter, and you have to protect that from all of this out here. I'm not saying all this is terrible or bad or all that stuff. It's how you think about it. You have to be aware of that. Otherwise, the special thing that you've cultivated your whole life, just starts to kind of dissipate and just kind of merge in with this, and then you lose it. You know, so you have to be protective of it, in my opinion. When we go back to, you know, we see this, how do I decide what goes in this, right? And I think part of it is it's like you go out, and let's say you see a beautiful mountain vista, or like you're on the river in the James, you're taking the light in the fall, and there's this glow that's hitting you. It's like, okay, what do I do with that? And then you have to kind of think, how can I make a composition that best kind of responds to that? And there's no method or kind of formula for it. It's really just a matter of, everybody has their own sense of balance. And that doesn't mean like spatial balance. It just means kind of this poetic balance that you kind of get a sense for. You're like, this feels right somehow. And there's this sense of rightness that you have about when I place this over here off to the side, that seems to kind of, seems to be a more honest response to this feeling that I'm getting. So it's not, I don't think that's a great answer, but I think it's getting at something. You just kind of, yeah, there's no golden rule or anything like that for me. It's always a little bit different. Sometimes I just might have an object just dead center, like a specimen or something, like something on an altar. Sometimes I might have it, so there's all these different ways of, I think, thinking about it that are kind of unique to you as a painter. And I think that one thing that I think that beginning painters don't get right off the bat is that when you're setting up let's say a still life or something, or you're making that decision or your vision, that's painting. Even though you haven't touched the brush yet, even though you haven't dipped your brush in the paint and touched the canvas, you are painting at that moment. So if you're setting up a still life, you're painting, right? You're like, and if you look at the work of Susan Jane Walt, one of the things that she says, she says, this is the point where I'm at the most free as a painter, is when I'm setting things up. Because anything's possible at this point. Anything, you're not locked into anything, and it's just this kind of, and I think a lot of painters want to skip over that. They want to just, okay, I just want to get to painting. And she's just like, oh, this is kind of painting and exploring. And then she'll work on the painting, and then she'll put her painting up on the wall for a few days and just walk past it and look at it and think about it, and then she'll bring it back down and kind of add something to it. That's kind of how I think about composition. Got to do the work. You can't, this is, my teacher told me this early on. He says painting is blue collar work. It's not angels come down and sing to you and you're inspired, and you go out and paint, and you're not allowed to paint unless you're inspired. He says you are responsible for your own, cultivating your own inspiration. And he says, you think about like a road worker who gets up in the morning on a 100-degree day, he doesn't have a choice. He doesn't even think about not showing up. He just shows up because it's just, and my teacher was not saying that one is harder than the other, or that painting is harder than what that guy has to do. What he was saying was that guy didn't have a conversation with himself about whether he should go or not. He just goes. And I think that as a painter, you have to be open to the grind. Like you've got to be open to just doing things and getting up and going out and painting again and again and again. Some days it's going to be great. Some days it's going to just feel like, you just feel sorry for the rest of the world for not having this wonderful thing in your life. And then other days you're just going to be like, oh my God, this is the last thing I want to do right now. I do not want to go out in the cold and paint, or I do not want to work on that painting that is going terribly, and we build these kind of barriers for ourselves to get to the painting. And I think you really have to just work. And my favorite students, the students that just kind of do great work, have consistently been the ones, not the ones that are the most talented or have the most experience, it's the ones that knew how to practice. And by practice, I mean you have to learn to get up and just get in front of the easel and you just paint consistently, not picking at it, and you have to make it so that it's woven into your life, not just patched onto your life like a hobby. You're not hobbies, you're a painter. And so you have to work. That would be my main